everyone.
Good morning.
Well, it's great to be back in person worshiping with you today. Hopefully that'll be our last hiatus from COVID, but grateful to all of you for bearing with us and grateful to be with you and very thankful for the people that experienced COVID in our congregation. Everyone is doing well, and that's the most important thing. So one quick announcement before we start our service. And that is that Elaine, after worship, has a couple of fun pictures to show. If you would like to stick around and see those, they'll be on the big screen here. So join us for that if you have a few minutes after church. I think that's all my announcements for today. So I think we're ready to move. I was going to forget this. Ready to go get our joys. Hold on. So, for those of you who are not with us regularly, we have a joy box where we put joys that we have in our lives in it to remind us to be joyful. However, next week, on a suggestion from Lori, we're going to start doing something a little different with our joy box. So, stay tuned for details on that. But for the joys we have today, we have our little change jar we have in the back, the Bruce Fund, named after a man who did some pretty amazing things with a penny. And Norma was kind enough to get our change cashed in, and we have now $9.61 in that fund. So keep your change coming, and also Norma made the great point that there is a change shortage, and so it's helpful for us to collect that change and turn it in, which is what Norma did for us. So thank you, Norma, for making the effort to do that. A good morning joy is a Sunday morning rainbow, for sure. And Lori has one of the same joys I had, but we'll get together. Yesterday I had the honor of officiating at a marriage for Jeff and Jody Hyde out near Sharkey's in Venice. It was at 4 p.m., right when it started to pour rain. It was supposed to be a beach wedding. It became a pavilion wedding, but it was a fun wedding and an honor for me to do that. It is a great joy for me to have Annika preaching today. I have not had a chance to hear her preach in person, so I'm looking forward to that today. One of the things Annika is going to be doing is sort of telling us her story, her faith story, pieces of that. I'm really happy she's doing that, not only because I want you to know more about her journey, because it helps us know about our journey, but also because we are going over the summer to have some opportunities for others of us, you don't have to preach, but other opportunities for us to tell our stories to each other, to learn about our faith and what brings us to this church. How did we get here? One of the great things about the United Church of Christ is it's an incredible diversity of people that find themselves in the UCC church, and it's one of our greatest strengths. And so it'd be great for us to learn from each other where we come from and why we're here and how God has moved in our lives to bring us here. So thank you, Annika, for helping us start that off today with your sermon. We're also going to embarrass you for just a second to say you shared some really good news with me right before church that your health is good, and you finished your treatment. No restrictions now, so he can go out and about with Elaine, who is our person out on the town, who sees things and experiences stuff for us and brings good information to us. But we're really thankful for that, Russ. And it was hard for all of us when you weren't here because you're such an important part of our community. And speaking of important parts of our community, Donna says to say hello. She is not here today, but thinking of us. I think Bob and Margaret still have family in town, if I remember. But we, of course, miss anybody who's not here with us, but so thankful, Russ, and got that good news.
Your mom.
Say again.
Your mom.
Yes.
Runny nose, so
right.
decided to stay home today.
Right. Mom is her nurse advised her to stay home today, so she is.
Is she okay?
Yeah.
She is. Yeah, she is. The other big joy for us is Libby is back for this Sunday. Such a happy thing to have you here. And one of your friends from college is here, and tell us your name again.
Isaac.
Isaac, okay, good. Okay, Isaac, great to have you back. So, all right, anybody else have any joys you forgot to put in our joy box? Okay, All right, great,
Oh,
thank you.
wait.
Oh, wait, Elaine.
I got to talk to my mother-in-law again, my 97-year-old mother-in-law. And she sounds good even though she can't do much now. She still sounds pretty good.
Great, that's
We
great.
told each other we loved each other, and
Good, that's
I
great.
always feel so good when I can talk to her.
Yeah,
Because it's
of
gonna be a
course.
day when I can't.
Right, so it makes you cherish the ones when you can.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
absolutely. Good. Okay, so we're gonna move on to our time of prayer, and we are going to do a responsive prayer written by Roddy Hamilton. Really like his work, discovered it fairly recently. And he is, I believe, a pastor in Canada. And he wrote a really interesting blog, which is not around anymore, but I just love the title. I've told you before, it's like Paws of God or something like that. So he's an animal guy, but writes some really good prayers. And so I thought this would be a good one for us today as we think about how we recently talked about the Holy Spirit, and as we think about hearing Annika's message today. I think this will help to focus us in prayer. So as usual, I'll read the part that says one, you'll read the part that says all. So let us pray. May we give way to glory, O God. May we let the light tingle with our lives, that we may see what you see in us.
May we see what you see, a love born in eternity, that finds a home in our souls and wants to be there.
A word that lifts itself from page into life and tells a story that begins with itself.
May we see what you see, a vision that brings past and future into the one meeting place and offers all that's present.
A wisdom born of generations, where time nurtures the promise and the longings of believers, wondering if this will be the generation that breaks it open. Okay, that's my mistake. So let's all
Keep
read.
going.
May we give way to glory and dare its splendor to rekindle our faith and transfigure our lives. So be it. Amen.
We follow directions.
All right, yeah, there you go. I mean, it's a little different when you're in person, and you can just do a retake on that, right? Okay, no big problem. Let's just take a moment to say together also the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
So I just want to talk about this song a little bit before I started. The reason why I chose this song for today's worship is because it was the last song that I sang as a kid through my last year of church camp in summer 2021. So I decided it would be a great song to play, and talking about my faith journey. Cool. Good.
salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? When evildoers assail me to devour my flesh, my adversaries and foes, they shall stumble and fall. Though an army encamp against me, my heart shall not fear. Though war rise up against me, yet I will be confident. One thing I ask of the Lord, that I will seek after, to live in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to behold the beauty of the Lord and to inquire of his temple. For he will hide me in his shelter in the day of trouble. He will conceal me under the cover of his tent. He will set me high on a rock. Now my head is lifted up above my enemies all around me, and I will offer in his tent sacrifices with shouts of joy. I will sing and make melody to the Lord. Hear, O Lord, when I cry aloud. Be gracious to me and answer me. Come, my heart says, seek his face. Your face, Lord, do I seek. Do not hide your face from me. Do not turn your servant away in anger, you who have been my help. Do not cast me off. Do not forsake me, O God of my salvation. If my father and mother forsake me, the Lord will take me up. Teach me your way, O Lord, and lead me on a level path because of my enemies. Do not give me up to the will of my adversaries, for false witnesses have risen against me, and they are breathing out violence. I believe that I shall see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Wait for the Lord, be strong, and let your heart take courage. Wait for the Lord.
As you all know, next week I will be going away to my regional church camp for 2 weeks. I will be working with both the middle school and elementary school camps as a music director. Pastor Evan has asked me to share a little bit about why I've chosen to stay so connected with this camp even after graduation, and how deeply the retreat has impacted my faith journey. I should first start with a little history about the retreat itself. This is the retreat at Silver Springs. It's a beautiful camp located in Ocala, Florida, about 5 minutes away from Silver Springs. The camp is equipped with 18 different cabins, each of which is air conditioned, thank goodness, and furnished with multiple bunk beds as well as dressers. The retreat at Silver Springs used to be called the Christian Church Conference Center. That's the old logo. But received a name change in 2014. I never really found out the reason why they changed the name, but it was good enough for me. I mean, it was a treat after all. By Silver Springs, it makes sense. The retreat at Silver Springs has a swimming pool, a volleyball court, a basketball court, a tetherball net, a beautiful butterfly garden that was put in commemoration of one of the counselors that died tragically a few years ago, and an outdoor challenge course for hours of fun deep in the woods. With all of these amenities, what's not to love? My family has a deep history with the retreat itself. Both of my grandfathers were ordained disciples of Christ ministers, so it only made sense that they'd send their children to their regional summer camp. My Nana was the first in our family to attend, and the connections she made there were also a factor in sending my father away. My parents met at the retreat when they were very, very young. They kept in touch throughout the years before eventually getting married because of the close friendship that camps make. My older brother and sister attended camp since they were 9 years old. Going to church camp is a generational rite of passage for my family, one that my mother was determined I would not miss. My fate was destined to be tightly interwoven with the retreat at Silver Springs. There was no way of escaping it, even if I wanted to. So where do I fit in? When I started to think about how I wanted to tell the story of my first interaction with the church camp that I went to, the conclusion I came to was to start with Girl Scout camp. Well, why would I start with Girl Scout camp if we're talking about church camp? When I was 9 years old, the first ever overnight camp I went to was an equestrian Girl Scout camp called Camp Wildwood. It's a little blurry, but she looks very happy on that horse, right?
But that's not you.
No, that's not me. It was one of the worst weeks of my entire life. My horse hated me. Everything smelled like horse poop. And halfway through the week, everyone started throwing up because the water was contaminated. The counselors only allowed us 5 minutes a day to cry, which made me feel like a criminal every time my eyes started to tear up from homesickness. Needless to say, I was very relieved when my mother came to take me away from the nightmare that was Girl Scout camp. I did not stay in Girl Scouts very much longer after this week, and this is not to slander the Girl Scout organization. This is just my personal experience. As I rode home in my mom's car, I began to sob when I remembered the next week I would have to go to church camp. Little did I know how vastly different it would be to the dreaded equestrian Girl Scout camp. I've always been the kid that's had best friends, but was never really anyone's best friend. I might have thought of them as my best friend, but they didn't really feel the same. I drifted from group to group, always just able to squeeze into any clique that I found, but never fitting quite right. I was like the puzzle piece that you think is gonna fit. It just doesn't. And then you realize, this doesn't even go with the puzzle I was working on in the first place. I had terrible anxiety, especially when talking to adults or asking for something that I needed. Pretty ironic for someone who's been performing their whole life. But I could deal with the heat of the spotlight on my face. It was afterwards in the lobby when people would come up to me and bombard me with praise, which doesn't sound that bad, but for me it was not great. The first time I ever set foot on the campgrounds, it was pouring down rain. We had just driven 2 hours from St. Pete to Ocala through a tropical storm to get there. Remember how I said my mom wouldn't let me skip it even if I wanted to? I had my tiny little suitcase in one hand, my trusty water bottle in another. I walked through the doors right there in that green pavilion, and stepping into that space, the retreat at Silver Springs, was like the first gulp of air after you finished an underwater breath-holding contest. There's no other word that I possess in my vocabulary that could describe the feeling that one feels when they step onto the campgrounds other than purely spiritual. An entire new world had opened up for me, one that would not judge me for who I am, regardless of the mistakes I made, in fact, would encourage them to be made. One that creates bonds so deep that they fundamentally change you as a person. One that kids could call their second home. It's definitely a big difference from the Girl Scout camp. All of the fears I had about the retreat almost instantaneously vanished as an indescribable peace washed over me for the first time in my 9 years of life. Finally, I found the puzzle that I belonged to. And it wasn't one of those dumb little kid puzzles like of Disney princesses. It was one of those huge 1,000-piece puzzles of something cool like the Grand Canyon. One of the staples of church camp is singing dozens of silly songs throughout the week. My favorite church camp song is about a little green frog that gets run over by a truck, whose remains are promptly eaten by a very large dog immediately after the incident. Yes, that one. While the song seems gruesome in nature, every year dozens of kids cheerfully sing about this frog's demise. And here's a video of us participating in something called Energizers, where we take like regular songs, pop songs, and make little funny dance moves to them. Next slide. Okay, the video. I'm right here. This is like 3 years ago. That's one of our energizers. We do that all the time. Church camp has always been a place for me to renew my spiritual connection to God and to create new connections with my peers in Christ. Performing at camp, whether it be silly songs or in worship, has always been a constant of my church camp experience. There is something unique about worshiping in a place where countless young individuals have discovered their faith and built their faith in. The retreat at Silver Springs is one of those places. When I was in 7th grade, I had a crisis. I realized I was a theater kid. Just kidding. I realized I was gay. Spoiler alert, I still am. Woo! Yeah! I had always, of course, supported and accepted people in the LGBTQ community because I grew up in the Disciples of Christ community. But I never imagined it would be something that I'd have to accept within myself. And the fact is, I didn't. Not for a very long time. I dampened the light within me. Even though I knew my parents and my friends wouldn't care who I was or who I wanted to love, I shoved that part of me as deep down as I possibly could. No one in my family was openly gay, no one at camp, and for the first time in my life, I felt utterly alone in my faith, like I was lost in the dark with no way to see. As I grew as a person and, well, taller, I started to become comfortable with myself. At first, I was afraid to even put a label on anything, afraid that I would be discovered as a fake or that it was just a phase. I was afraid of confronting that part of myself for years, and it wasn't until January 2021 that I finally let myself be who I was meant to be, who God intended me to be. Becoming concrete in my sexuality affected my faith in a way I never thought would happen. I've always been identified as Christian. I used to be called church camp girl in high school. While that was annoying in its own way, it held a sort of comfort to have a group I would always identify with, Christian. But being increasingly open about who I was invited other people to be increasingly open with how they felt about it. People who I believed were my friends started to look at me differently. They saw me as the radical activist who would never shut up about political ideology. They were right, but they also believed I would go to hell for it. I watched the people who I had shared deep companionship with condemn everything I stood for. It didn't matter to them if I was kind or compassionate. It didn't matter how devoted I was to God. It didn't matter if I spent every waking moment serving others. Even if I was the perfect Christian, it wouldn't matter. They could only see me as gay, and that was reason enough to hate me. They only sought to dim my light. And I'll be honest, it hurt more than they deserved. They didn't deserve these negative feelings I felt because they looked down at me with pity because they truly believed I was a monster. They didn't deserve a single tear I shed, the words I poured my energy into trying to get them to understand. I had to learn to move on and not let a single minute of my time be wasted on those who only wanted to hurt me. I continued to feel alone in my faith. The label I had once gladly slapped onto myself and wore with pride, as well as the community I had once loved to celebrate with, became one of hate. I was questioned about my identity for the first time in my life. If I didn't believe and follow every single word in the Bible, was I really a Christian? I tried to defend myself the only way I knew how. I believe in God and that Jesus is the Son of God. Isn't that enough? I began to doubt myself. I became angry with my faith and the people who were so-called Christians, people who didn't hesitate to turn on me when they discovered what I believe and who I am. I was asked over and over, was I really a Christian? I looked at the world around me and those who shared this label of Christian and the cruelty that filled their hearts. The word Christian had been marred and twisted into one that created a feeling of dread inside my own heart. I was swimming in the middle of the ocean without a life raft, choking on the grief from losing the blissful ignorance I once had regarding the state of this world. It is broken. Our faith is broken. I was choking on the grief of losing the pristine image of my religion I've had since I was a child, and I started to question, if this is what being Christian truly is, do I really want to be one? But it's not. Hateful words and exclusionary actions is not what being Christian truly is. Being Christian is being the light of the world. As the song Light of the World from Godspell says, let your light so shine so that they might know some kindness again. We all need help to feel fine. We must let our light shine so that the world may know some kindness again. Everyone needs help to feel fine. Going back to camp after losing my faith showed me the truth. There were Christians in this world that were willing to let their light shine and to let others' light shine. It renewed me, but it was also one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. I was afraid of being met with the same exclusion and hate that other Christians had shown me. I was afraid, but I went anyway. My last year at church camp, both of these pictures are from last summer, as a camper is something that I'll never forget. This is our senior banquet. Every year the seniors get a banquet with a different theme. Our theme was Candyland, and they get called to the stage like some ceremony, and they tell you about where you're going to college, and it's just this very special moment. These are the girls that I graduated with over here as well. This is us leading worship on the last day of camp. The seniors were given a chance to share their faith journey in a short speech called Consecration. I recounted openly how I struggled with my faith when I became an adult, and how my sexuality had changed my relationship with the Christian community. I was met with nothing but endless love and support from the people I had grown up with. Next slide. And this is us sophomore year, so about 4 years ago, and this is us last year. The picture's kind of blurry, but we've been together for a very long time, since third grade. I stood in that place, and I witnessed the blossoming spiritual connections being made, and I had to ask myself, how can God not be real? I witnessed the excitement to spread love throughout this world, and I asked myself, how can God not be real? That week spent at camp gave me the feeling of relief I had been searching for since I first let my light shine. They didn't try to dampen it, but instead fueled it to shine brighter. It didn't matter to the people at the retreat at Silver Springs who I was. They would always love me. This is my group. The retreat at Silver Springs was where I finally accepted that my future involved a ministry, and it wouldn't have happened without their support. It was in that moment that I realized I could be that support for someone else. My years at camp did not have to end after I graduated. I could volunteer my time to continue the cycle of love that camp creates. I want to be the life raft for the kid that has no hope. I want to be living proof that people love you no matter who you are. I want to give answers to those who are desperately seeking them, to let them know that their relationship with their faith and their vision of God will change as they change, and that would be okay. I want to show these children the future of our world, that there is hope, and that there is at least one person on their side. I want them to feel the deep love, devotion, and support that I was given the entirety of my time at camp. In a world so barren of warmth, we must devote ourselves to becoming the beacon of light our society so desperately needs. In a world filled with hopelessness, we must be the ones to fill it with hope. That's what it means to be Christian. It means to be love. I am love. You are love. We are all the love that the world is begging for us to plant in those who are held down with hatred every minute they live their lives. You press the button here. This is a quote from Jennifer Williamson. Your work is to discover who you are, and then with all your heart, give your light to the world. There is no darkness in this world that can't be defeated by a little light.
Monica, that song you wrote the last time
I
you
wrote
sang?
that song.
Yeah.
Yes.
Woo! And now for our benediction. Flashlight. When a flashlight grows dim or quits working, do you throw it away? Of course not. You charge the batteries. When a person messes up or finds themselves in a dark place, do you cast them aside? Of course not. You help them charge their batteries. Some need AA, attention and affection. Some need AAA, attention, affection, and acceptance. Some need C, compassion, and some need D, direction. And if they still don't seem to shine, simply sit with them quietly and share your light.
Amen.
Amen.
All right, thank you, Monica. We'll be praying for you at the camp the next couple of weeks. We'll miss you. And now if you want to see some fun pictures, you can do that on our screen. Elaine has some things to show. Go in peace. We'll see you all soon. Amen.
You have